long before the holy books, organized religions, or modern science. Wisdom was already flowing through this planet, and one of the most mysterious and powerful consciousnesses to transmit that wisdom was Thoth. Known in Egypt as the scribe of the gods, keeper of mysteries, architect of time, and master of the creative word, Thoth was more than a wise man. He was a transmitter of realities. Most people have heard of the famous Emerald Tablet, a fragment of Hermetic wisdom that inspired alchemists, mystics, and seekers for centuries. The phrase, "as above, so below," comes from it. But that was just the surface. Thoth's true teachings go far beyond the tablet. They were spread out, hidden, and preserved in layers of symbolic language, accessible only to those who awaken from the inside out. And maybe you're one of them. And in this video, you're going to discover 10 of these hidden teachings, not the ones in manuals, not the ones repeated in commercial books, but the ones that emerge at the exact moment your consciousness is ready. You're not watching this by accident. You're being reminded, and the first teaching starts right now. 1. You are inside the mind. What if I told you that you're trapped inside yourself? No, it's not a metaphor, and it's not cheap self-help either. It's literally this. You live inside your own mind. You think you're looking at the world out there, that you're walking down the street, interacting with people, making decisions. But what you call reality is actually a reflection, a projection of what you carry inside. Thoth, one of the greatest masters of ancient wisdom, said this thousands of years ago. The mind is the original field. Reality comes after, but no one told you that. Since you were a kid, you were taught to believe that your mind is in here, inside your head, locked in your brain like a control room. But that's one of the biggest lies you've ever believed. The truth is the opposite. You're not inside your mind. Your body is inside it, like a fish in the ocean. Think about it. When you close your eyes, the world disappears. Everything that exists in that moment is what's happening inside you. Thoughts, sensations, memories, emotions. And when you open your eyes, you think you're seeing the real world. But what you're seeing is the way your mind is filtering reality. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. Want a simple example? Two people are stuck in traffic. One is furious, punching the steering wheel, feeling like the day is ruined. The other is listening to music, using the time to reflect. Same traffic, but the experience totally different. Because what changes isn't what's happening. It's the mindset of the person going through it. That means the mind is more than just thoughts. It's the field that shapes the world around you. And here's what Thoth taught, plain and simple. Everything is mental. But hold on. That doesn't mean reality is some meaningless illusion. It means reality starts where you never look, inside. 2. Time is a maze, and you are the center. According to the ancient teachings attributed to Thoth, time wasn't seen as something fixed or linear, like we've been led to believe. The idea of past, present, and future in a straight sequence. That's a useful concept, but a limited one. It helps us schedule appointments, count the years. But spiritually, that model explains almost nothing. From the perspective of someone who accessed higher states of consciousness, time appeared as a spiral, a layered movement, looping, repeating, folding in on itself. And that's why so many people live in repetitive cycles, like they're stuck on the same curve, spinning in the same spot for years. How many times have you found yourself going through the same situations, attracting the same problems, facing the same conflicts, even after changing your location, your environment, even your lifestyle? That's not bad luck. That's an energetic pattern caught in a loop within the spiral. Because time, in this deeper sense, isn't something outside of you. It's an internal experience, and it responds to the frequency you give off. When you live stuck in the past, reliving pain, feeding guilt, obsessing over old decisions, you anchor yourself in a timeline that should have already been left behind. When you live projecting into the future, anxious for something that hasn't arrived yet, trying to control what doesn't exist yet, you disconnect from the now too. But the now is the only real point of creation. The present is the center of the spiral. When you dive into the now with attention, with real presence, something happens. It's like you pierce through the walls of time. You access a space where past and future meet, where everything is available, where answers come from within. That's why deep states of meditation, silence, or expanded perception bring insights that feel like they came from somewhere else. In reality, they come from a layer of your own consciousness that isn't trapped in the regular timeline, a place where the soul remembers what it always knew but had forgotten. Many wise ones interpreted this as access to the soul's memory, a subtle field where the deepest experiences from this life and others are stored not as stories, but as vibrations. And when you touch that field with awareness, you start to understand why certain emotions visit you, why certain themes repeat, and more importantly, how to change that. Because when you shift your vibration in the now, you don't just influence what's ahead. You change the echoes of what's behind. You change the meaning of your story. And with that, new futures become available. 3. The hidden order in chaos. Life sometimes feels like a series of breakdowns. Just when you think everything's under control, something breaks. Things fall out of place, doors close, relationships shake. Situations collapse, and what was once predictable becomes unfamiliar territory. The mind, programmed to seek safety, panics. It screams, "What did I do wrong?" But what if you didn't do anything wrong? What if what you're calling a crisis is actually a reconfiguration of your path? Scholars who've studied the teachings attributed to Thoth found a deep understanding there. Chaos isn't disorder, it's movement. It's the stage before a new pattern is revealed. It's like the universe is rearranging the pieces on the board to align you with something greater, something your mind can't see yet, but your soul is already ready to live. Disorder, in this context, works as a language. It's as if reality is saying, "You're not paying attention, so I'm going to shout." And that shout comes in the form of discomfort, frustration, loss, confusion. But it's not a punishment, it's an invitation. Let me share with you a short story that illustrates what we're learning. A simple story, but full of layers. Once upon a time, there was a man named Elior. He lived in a village surrounded by forests and believed his mission was to keep everything running perfectly. He was known for being organized, meticulous, a true guardian of order. His house was spotless. His days followed a strict routine. Nothing was left to chance. But over time, Elior began to feel a strange emptiness. Even with everything working just right, there was something inside him that felt asleep. He ignored that feeling. After all, he was doing everything right. He worked, paid his bills, helped the neighbors. He was doing his part. Until one morning, he woke up to a strange sound coming from the forest, a strong wind, unlike anything he'd ever felt. The trees seemed to bend, the ground trembled. Within minutes, a devastating storm hit the village. Roofs flew off, rivers overflowed, the earth gave way. Elior's house, the one he had spent years building, was swept away by the water. Desperate, he tried to save what he could, but there was no way. Everything turned to mud, debris, ruins. When the storm passed, he sat in the middle of what was left, soaked, exhausted, with dirt-covered hands, and in silence. For the first time in years, he wasn't doing anything. He was just there, fully present, listening to his own breath. In the days that followed, something curious happened. People from the village came to help him. He, who always did everything alone, now found himself surrounded by hands, gestures, words. For the first time, he allowed himself not to be in control, and because of that, he started to notice things he used to miss. The birds singing, the smell of wet wood, the touch of rain on his skin, the kindness of others. But the most surprising thing was what he found beneath the rubble. Seeds. Lots of seeds he had saved years ago, back when he still dreamed of growing a garden, but never had time for. He had forgotten about them. Chaos hadn't, and in that land torn apart by the storm, Elior began to plant. Slowly, flowers sprouted, fruit trees, medicinal herbs. And along with the garden, something began to bloom inside him, something that had never flourished before: peace. He finally understood that his old idea of order wasn't harmony. It was rigidity. It was control, and the chaos came only to set him free from it. This story is a mirror. How many times have you held on to structures out of fear of feeling what's trying to be born inside you? How many times has the universe tried to show you a new path, and you resisted? The suffering comes exactly from that resistance, from the attachment to what no longer serves, from the attempt to keep something intact that the soul has already decided to transform. 4. Your thoughts are codes of creation. And it's exactly when you stop resisting, when you accept that chaos has something to teach you, that a new space opens up, a space for creation. Because the ground that was once taken up by control, fear, and old structures is now clear. And in that space, you start to notice something that was always there, but you couldn't see. The thoughts you feed silently are writing the storyline of your life. What runs through your mind every day isn't just a random stream of ideas. Every thought is a code, a vibrational command sent into the invisible field of reality, and that field, which responds to vibration, starts organizing everything around you to reflect what you're putting out. Most people aren't aware of this. They think they're just thinking, that they're just worried, just reflecting, just venting. But what they don't realize is they're giving instructions to the universe, and the universe is listening. There's one detail that changes everything. A thought only gains real power when it's charged with emotion. When you think something with emotional intensity, you imprint that code on your field. It's like the emotion is the ink that sets the thought into the subtle plane: fear, anger, guilt, sadness. When these emotions come along with a thought, it gains weight, gains form, turns into a tendency. In the same way, thoughts filled with higher vibrations like gratitude, trust, and acceptance start attracting situations that match those frequencies. Have you ever noticed how sometimes everything seems to go wrong all at once? Like one little worry kicks off a chain of negative situations. That happens because one thought doesn't come alone. It connects with other similar thoughts and starts forming a field. That field becomes a filter, and then everything that happens gets interpreted through that filter. But this works the other way around too. When you shift into a higher vibration, life seems to flow better. Coincidences show up more often. Answers arrive. The right people cross your path, because you're putting out a different kind of signal. The ancients knew this, and even though Thoth didn't use the modern words we use today, the scholars of his tradition knew that the word, the symbol, the idea were all creative tools. That's why, in ancient rituals, every word was chosen with care. Every symbol carried a vibration. Nothing was random, because everything was seen as a form of creative language, and that language isn't outside of you. It's operating within you all the time. When you mentally say, "I never get it right," "This isn't for me," "This is going to go wrong," you're repeating mantras. But in reverse, limiting spells, the mind believes it, the field responds, life confirms it. 5. The inner journey is the true beginning. And when you start to see the mind as this creative field that responds to your inner commands, a new question starts to rise quietly but persistently. Who is it that's thinking all of this? Who are you, without the thoughts? Because up until now, everything seemed external. You were observing events, analyzing emotions, adjusting patterns. But there comes a point where the real work begins, and it doesn't happen on the outside. It starts when you have the courage to look inward, not to criticize yourself, but to truly get to know yourself. Most people are still living with their eyes turned outward. They look for answers in books, in gurus, in formulas, in miracle promises. They believe something outside will bring them back to themselves. But the oldest masters always pointed in the same direction. The temple is within. The real path is internal, and the most sacred portal is the one where consciousness turns toward itself. But nobody warns you what happens when you really enter that temple. At first, it feels quiet. It feels empty. But soon, sensations start showing up, ones you thought you had already gotten over, old emotions, forgotten memories, traces of what was left behind in the rush to move on. You feel guilt, anger, sadness, but this time there's no escaping it, because now the path is to look, to hold the gaze without turning away, to let it come. And at that point, a lot of people think everything's falling apart. I thought awakening was supposed to be light, they say, but it feels like everything got worse. What no one tells you is that real self-knowledge doesn't begin with peace. It begins with deconstruction. It starts by putting you face to face with the version of yourself that was built to please others, to fit in, to survive. A version that learned to be strong, to be productive, to be accepted, but that often forgot how to simply be. When you start to touch who you really are, all those masks begin to shake, because you can't pretend anymore. You can't keep playing roles that don't match your truth. You can't keep repeating stories that no longer fit. That's when the portals open. They're not portals in the sky. They're portals within the soul. Internal passages that only reveal themselves when you surrender to presence, without judgment, without running, without trying to fix everything with your mind. And when you go through those portals, you don't find something outside of yourself. You find yourself, but not the you that learned how to exist in this world. The other one, the original you, the living spark behind all the layers, the one who observes, who feels, who is present, even when everything is silent. 6. The shadow is not your enemy, it's your final test. This is the point in the journey where a lot of people stop, because up until now, awakening felt like a search for light. But now, the light starts to shine on parts that were hidden, and what shows up isn't always pretty. The shadow is everything you learn to hide, everything that was once judged, rejected, misunderstood. Fears, desires, impulses, memories, the stuff you were ashamed to feel, that you learned to bury to be accepted, that you silenced just to keep going. But what was repressed didn't disappear. It just went into hiding. And now that you've chosen to look inward, it shows up. Shadow doesn't come to punish you. It comes to show you where your real willpower is. Because everything you've denied in yourself is still operating in the background. It's like secret programming that influences your choices, sabotages your relationships, distorts the way you see yourself. That's why ignoring it isn't an option. Those who ignore their own shadow live controlled by it. The shadow is the final test, not because it wants to break you, but because it wants to know if you're ready to integrate all that you are. Because only what you have the courage to face can be brought into the light, and facing the shadow isn't thinking about it. It's feeling it. It's reliving what was buried. It's looking straight at the fear with no excuses. It's admitting that there's anger, there's jealousy, there's guilt, there's sadness, and still keeping your eyes open. The ancients knew this. The initiatic traditions spoke of a descent, a moment when the initiate goes down into the underworld of their own being, not to fight, but to find something forgotten, a piece of the soul that got stuck in some pain of the past and now needs to be brought back. This journey is personal. No one can do it for you, and it doesn't happen all at once. The shadow shows up in layers, in cycles. It comes disguised as a trigger, a frustration, a rejection. And every time you feel like you're going backwards, like you're feeling it all again, maybe it's not a setback. Maybe it's another layer that's ready to rise. 7. Silence is the language of the divine. And when the shadow starts to reveal what was hidden, the instinct is to run and search for answers. The mind kicks into defense mode, trying to understand, explain, fix. But that urge to solve everything with thought is exactly what keeps us from hearing what lies beyond it. That's when true silence starts to call. And it's not the silence around you. It's the silence within. The kind that shows up when you stop trying to understand and just allow yourself to feel. When the mind quiets down and something deeper begins to rise, this kind of silence isn't the absence of sound. It's pure presence. It's when you stop reacting, stop justifying, stop defending, and just observe. There's a mind that thinks, but there's another that simply witnesses. That's the higher mind, the one that sees everything but doesn't get attached to anything. The ancients understood this inner space as a meeting point with the divine, a silent region of consciousness where there are no judgments, no names, no concepts. There's only what is, and it's in that state that true wisdom begins to show up, not as accumulated information, but as instant clarity. It's like you just know without knowing how you know. Have you ever felt that? That moment when, after thinking so much, you finally let go. And then a response comes, an intuition, a sudden clarity that pops up out of nowhere. That's not nothing. That's you accessing fertile silence, the invisible womb where new realities form before they show up in the physical world. Modern life taught us to run from that place. We're addicted to noise. News, social media, opinions, endless content. We're always busy, always distracted, always thinking. And the more noise we make, the further we get from that sacred listening. But it's only when the mind quiets down that you start to hear what's always been there, the voice that whispers without words, the intelligence that doesn't need logic to be understood, the presence that doesn't demand effort to be felt. 8. The astral is real and you've been there before. And in that silence where the mind stops searching, something begins to happen behind the veils, because when the noise fades, the invisible starts to reveal itself. Sometimes it comes as intuition, other times in dreams so vivid they feel more real than reality itself, and that's when you start to realize there's way more than what your physical eyes can see. The world we know isn't the only plane where consciousness moves. There's a layer of existence that isn't physical, but it's just as real. Many call it the astral plane, and no, it's not out there. It's a state, a vibrational field you access when your consciousness detaches from the body's density. Have you ever woken up feeling like you just came back from a battle, or had a dream so intense it stayed with you all day, like you were still in it? Or maybe you dreamed about someone you haven't seen in ages and suddenly woke up with this deep emotional clarity that's impossible to explain. That's not your imagination, that's a shift in consciousness. The astral plane is the space where thought turns into form, almost instantly. There, everything is shaped by vibration. There are no physical filters between intention and manifestation. If you feel fear, it shows up as an image. If you feel desire, it takes form. If you're at peace, everything around you reflects that. That's why the astral isn't a place to play with magic. It amplifies who you are. No masks. And maybe that explains why so many people are afraid to sleep, why so many wake up exhausted, even after lying in bed all night. The body rested, but the consciousness stayed active, navigating layers of the astral with no direction, no protection, no awareness of what it was doing. Because it's not enough to just access the invisible. You need to be aware of what you're bringing with you. Entering that field with a confused, anxious mind full of noise and unresolved trauma is like diving into deep waters carrying rocks. You sink in your own heaviness. That's why the ancients always spoke about the importance of purifying your inner field before venturing into the unseen. 9. To manifest is to become what you desire. And the more you start to realize the depth of the subtle plane, the more you begin to understand that nothing that happens is truly random. Because just like in the astral, everything here also responds to vibration. The difference is that here, matter takes longer to move, but it still responds. It always has. This is the point in the journey where manifestation stops being some distant theory and starts revealing itself as a real, living, present process. And no, it has nothing to do with making wishes to the universe, like you're writing a list of dreams and waiting for something magical to happen. The universe doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. If you want something badly, but you're vibrating scarcity, doubt, or fear while thinking about it, what the universe picks up on isn't the wish. It's the frequency of the wish. And if that frequency is out of alignment, what you attract is confusion, delay, or exactly the opposite of what you want. That's why so many people get frustrated with this topic. Because they think manifesting means repeating affirmations, visualizing a new car, or asking for money, love, success. But if deep down, you're still vibrating that it's not possible, that you don't deserve it, or that it's going to fail, What shows up is consistent with that inner state, not the surface-level desire. The quantum field, which the ancients already understood in symbolic and intuitive ways, works like a mirror of your dominant vibration. And here's the game-changing detail. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. It just records and executes whatever is repeated with enough emotion. If you imagine every single day, with clarity, with feeling, and with conviction, a different kind of life, your field starts to change. And when it changes, reality has no choice. It reorganizes. Not because of some external magic, but because of vibrational coherence. It's like switching radio stations. The song changes because the frequency changed, but there's one important point that almost no one talks about. Manifesting isn't about attracting something that's far away. It's about becoming a version of yourself that's already in tune with what you're looking for. Manifestation doesn't come to the one who waits. It comes to the one who embodies. You want to live love. Be love in your actions. You want prosperity? Grow a mindset that honors value. You want freedom. Make choices that respect your truth, even when no one's watching. What you want already exists, but you only find it when you align. 10. You are the portal, the alchemist, the creator. This is where the journey changes direction. Because in the end, everything you were searching for, clarity, power, direction, love, meaning, isn't out there. It's not in books, not in teachers, not in formulas. It's in the mirror, in you. And that's what the ancients tried to show us in so many ways. The message was always there, hidden under layers of symbols, myths, and metaphors, but clear for those with eyes to see. You are not a lost fragment, you are the center. The point of connection between the visible and the invisible. You are the temple, you are the ritual, you are the priest and the offering. The path doesn't lead to a place. The path leads inward. True alchemy was never about metals. It was always about states of consciousness. Turning lead into gold was the language of the initiates to explain something way more subtle. It was about turning pain into wisdom, fear into presence, scars into strength. It was about looking at everything that broke you and seeing the raw material for your own rebuilding. The true alchemist is the one who goes through the fire and doesn't try to put out the flames, but learns how to walk through them. They don't deny the pain. They learn from it. They don't hide their shadows. They talk to them. They don't wait for permission. They know the sacred is already pulsing inside. That's why real spirituality doesn't need approval. It doesn't need recognition. And definitely doesn't need a savior, because no one is going to show up with a golden key and open the door for you. You know why? Because the door isn't locked, and the key has always been in your hand. You are the portal, and everything you call divine is waiting to manifest through your conscious existence. The question was never whether or not you're worthy of it. The question is, how much longer are you going to keep forgetting who you are? Because remembering who you are isn't about learning something new. It's about removing what was layered on top. Layers of guilt, fear, shame, comparison. All of that was stacked on you throughout life, but none of it is you. You've always been more. You just accessed codes that aren't found just anywhere. These teachings aren't meant to be read. They're meant to be remembered. They weren't created. They were accessed. And if they reached you today, it wasn't by accident. The mind woke up, the vibration shifted, and when that happens, other portals start to open. So before you go, pay attention. A special video has been set aside for you. A next step in this journey, direct, deep, necessary. It's about to pop up on your screen. Just click, and I'll meet you there. Because the wisdom of Thoth doesn't end here. It continues where most people stop. And if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to go beyond. I'll see you on the other side.